everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matt Cuda, and today we're going to review the Vario-Tessar T FE 16 to 35 millimeter f4 ZA lens, a Zeiss lens that was made for Sony back in 2014. It is a Sony E-mount full frame. It was designed for full frame. However, it can be used with the Sony APS-C cameras as well. The aperture is f4 to f22. That might be an issue for some of you that want to do astrophotography and you're looking for that f2.8 or better. This is really, in my opinion, a landscape camera. The aperture blades has 7. They are rounded aperture blades. The weight is 18.2 ounces, so it's over a pound. The filter size is 72 millimeters. The minimum focus is 11 inches. It has a 0.19x magnification, so it's not really a macro lens per se. It's weather sealed, which kind of surprised me a little bit. And the list price for this is $998, but it's been in production since 2014. It is an older lens. The used price, about $500 to $600 on KEH. I'm sure you can find them even cheaper than that on eBay or even some Japanese companies and so forth. So that is the specifications. Now let's move on to actually taking a look at this lens and seeing the build quality and so forth. Okay, let's take a look at the build quality here of this lens. First of all, let's take off the lens cap and the rear cap. It's a well-made lens. First of all, the outer case is made of aluminum. It's got good heft to it, like it's over a pound, as I already said. You can see the Zeiss emblem right there, which Zeiss is no joke. They make good glass. Their glass is not as, or I should say, other manufacturers are producing high quality glass too now, so the Zeiss doesn't get as much as credit as it used to. But I'll tell you what, back in the 90s, guys, Zeiss was the lens. I mean, it was high quality. They made them for the Hasselblad cameras, and they were just amazing. If you look here in the front element, it's a little bit convex, but not bad. You're not going to be banging this on anything. Notice when I zoom, it is not internal zoom. Notice how this the front element pops out as I zoom. By the way, great dampening on that zoom. I really love it. Oh man, that's just butter right there. The focus ring is just butter. Man, I love that. That's good quality. Good build quality. Weather resistant. Wow. I mean, man, from a build perspective, this thing is the cat's meow. So, of course, the lens hood removes. Lens hood is sturdy. I love the way it feels. It's kind of a thicker plastic than, say, a Rokinon. There's definitely a better quality to it. I also like that it has these dots. It has these red dots that you can line up. Am I crazy, or maybe I've never had one that does that. I don't know, but you can look at the red dot on here, and you can take the big line red dot, you put it there, and then you just pop it right in, and now those two dots align right there. It's just like the rear element, how it mounts into your camera. I don't know. Am I crazy? I've never had a lens like that. I mean, I'm trying to think if my 2 to 600 does that. If it does, I've not noticed it. But anyway, it's just well made. That first of all is what really strikes me. Now again, from that, from an imaging perspective, which you're going to see here in a little bit, there was some distortion, so you can you take that however you want to. The rear element, or the rear element and the mount is metal. It looks to be all a magnesium alloy, or maybe an aluminum alloy. Now this particular copy that I got has been through it. You can see the brazing here. it's been around for a while and it's still going strong. And I mean, who knows, it could have been dropped. I mean, this was made in 2014. It could have been dropped. It could have been remanufactured along the way. It could have been repaired. Who knows? But it is a great build. That's all I can say about that. So let's move on to the next segment, which is the photographs I made with this.
Okay, let's take a look at the images here that I was able to capture. I went to a place called Soco Falls in western North Carolina, and I thought that would be a good spot for testing this. These are also part of another review that I'm doing on the Sony A7 IV, and that is what I used here in this first image. This is a full frame 16mm image, so you get to see what it's going to look like at its widest perspective. Now, what I want to show you about this is a few things. One, let's look up here in the top left corner. Okay. Now, hopefully you can see this, but the top left corner up here is distorted. There's quite a bit of distortion, and that is something that I hear a lot of people talking about. And the distortion extends over to right about here in the top corner. So it's probably, you know, it's a pretty good chunk of your photo. Now, is that a big deal? For some people it is. For me, it's borderline. It's like, okay, yeah, you know, somebody's gonna notice that. Your average person on the street is not gonna care about that. Certainly, photo editors might care about it. If you're blowing this up in a very large format, you know, maybe it's more of a concern. But there are ways to get around it. Cropping is one way, and we'll see that in a minute. And even in this photograph here, if we look down in the lower left corner, see, I've converted this to an 8x10, so I've lost, you know, a few megapixels up here. But you'll see there's really almost no distortion down here at the bottom where it was, you can start to see a little bit there, but where it was cropped, you know, people aren't going to notice that. I mean, it's sharp. If I zoom in here, it's very sharp. It's a very sharp lens, by the way, especially in the center. You can see just how nice it looks. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised overall by the image quality. And this is no, you know, short exposure. This is a 10-second exposure. I'm in the dark down here, f13, 16mm, and I was very pleased with the performance. The next image, now we're going to look at, okay, here's what can happen with crop. You know, suppose you want to crop it. Suppose you just, you know, I want just the main falls here, and I want just kind of a close-up of these falls. You know, this is an 8-second exposure, ISO 100, 35mm. Now I'm zoomed into 35mm. If we look up here in the corner, you're not going to see the distortion, and the reason for that is quite simple. There is no distortion because it's cropped. So I went from, you know, I cropped this from a 42 megapixel. This is my A7R Mark III. If you look up here, it's now at 35.2 megapixels. So I did crop in some on it, and that got rid of the distortion for the most part. So there's ways around it, you know, guys. I mean, I think it's still a sharp lens. A lot of people are poo-pooing this lens, and, you know, maybe it's not as good as some of the newer lenses. You know, like I said, this came out in 2014. The next image. Okay, this one is Soco Falls as well, of course. This is taken on my A7R Mark III. So you got a 42 megapixel image. I've cropped it down to 34.7 megapixels to get the crop that I wanted. And again, we can see that you're not going to have the distortion. Okay, this is 24mm, which is a very typical, I guess, focal length for doing scenics and so forth. Now, we're going to see a little bit of distortion here in the upper left, just a little bit where I didn't crop it out. I think I cropped less off the top and more off the bottom in this image. And over here, we're starting to see that distortion creep in to the upper right corner. So it's still there. Down at the bottom down here, this is where I did the majority of my cropping. and so you're going to see almost no distortion, or no distortion really. I'm trying to crop out some of this junk. You guys know at the bottom of waterfalls you get all this junk down in here, and I was trying to crop some of that away. But yeah, it looks good. Here's a little bit of distortion here, but not bad. Distortion causes blur too, by the way. When you distort something, it brings the quality down. So you're going to get that blurred image. So that was ISO 124 millimeters, f11 at 13 seconds. It was dark in here. It was super dark. Oh, also using a polarizer here, guys. Not always at full strength, but this one appears to be almost full strength polarizer. This one is full polarization. This one is full polarization. So as you can see, it is a very capable lens, and it's a lens that, honestly, if you could pick it up for 400 or 500 used, it is a great deal. Especially if you're not someone that is out there doing this type of photography every day. If you're primarily a wildlife photographer and you just want a lens to take with you that you don't have to worry about, it's not going to cost you $2,000. It's going to make, very good images, but not awesome quality images. This is the lens for you, in my opinion. So anyway, that's all I had for the images.
Okay, so welcome back, and let's take a look at this lens from my perspective, the conclusions that I've drawn on this lens, and do I think this lens is for you? I think the most obvious question you have to ask yourself is, what is your primary purpose for this lens? If you are a nature photographer, I think you should probably have a 16 to 35 millimeter. It's a very versatile zoom that a lot of photographers have with them at all times. I think personally, I don't actually have a 16 to 35, and I'm thinking about adding one. I don't do a lot of landscape, but when I do, I like having the versatility of the zoom. There are just some places that you cannot zoom with your feet. You have to actually go and zoom in with your lens. So a prime is not always going to be the most effective choice. As you saw with the images earlier, you saw that I could do a lot of different angles and so forth, different zooms, and have a much more tell the story in a much better way, so to speak. So, are you an astrophotographer? If you're an astrophotographer, I'm going to say, steer clear of this. It's not really an astro lens. Could it be used for one? Yes, in a pinch it could be used for one. But is it really? I don't think so. I don't think it was designed that way. I don't think that it makes sense to do that. If you're a wildlife photographer, like I am primarily, but you dabble in landscape and waterfalls and that type of thing, I think it makes good sense. The price is right. You're not spending $2,000 for a lens that you're going to use once or twice a year. Here you've got a $500 used option, and I think that's how I would think of this lens. Now, if you're on an extreme budget, absolutely nothing wrong with this lens, even if you are a landscape photographer. You've got the distortion to deal with in the corners. Other than that, I really didn't see any other problems. I didn't see a lot of fringing or vignetting. I didn't see any kind of weird anomalies other than just the distortion. And understand that distortion is normal with a wide-angle lens. Yes, you can pay thousands of dollars to get one that doesn't distort, but distortion is part of the game, and sometimes you want that distortion. Sometimes you want that leaning effect, so to speak, with trees and so forth, to give you a kind of a surreal look. So there's nothing wrong with this lens. It's a solid lens. It has weather sealing. If I were going to say anything about it, in conclusion, I would say I wished it had the more modern Sony look, as far as having the zoom, the aperture ring on it and so forth. But that's nitpicky. everything about it just seems to work for me. Honestly, I'm thinking about buying one just because it's just a nice lens to have in your bag. Even if you're, you don't have to worry about it if it gets stolen, you're only out, $500. I don't know. I mean, you let me know what you think. A lot of people have said negative things about this lens, but I think they're primarily people that use these lenses often, and they're primarily people that probably should have the $2,500 lens. Give me your feedback. Tell me what you think. Thanks for watching. Make it a great day. And as always, get out there and enjoy nature. Bye-bye.